With that, we'll thank everybody for the questions. And speaking of bringing a tear to the eye, I cried tears of joy today because, ladies and gentlemen, it has finally happened. Erik Karlsson is no more. Well, he's still alive, but he is now he is traded in his role of apex predator for waddly thing.
Waddly thick boy.
Erik Karlsson has been traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. It is a 3-team trade also involving the Montreal Canadiens, which, now that we know it's a 3-team trade, and not only that, it's a loaded 3-team trade.
Some big names from like 3 years ago getting bounced around.
Yeah.
Fucking Dubas masterclass. Holy shit.
So the details of this are insane because this might be the biggest 3-team trade I've ever seen, just in terms of the amount of pieces moving.
Yeah.
I think the best way to handle this is to probably go team by team and how we view this deal for each team. So I'm going to go with the team that's first alphabetically, and more importantly is the big surprising factor in this one. I don't know if anyone had this team being involved, but the Montreal Canadiens, who in this trade reacquire Jeff Petrie on 25% retained salary. So Pittsburgh retains 25% on Jeff Petrie, which is just under $1.6 million. So it's Jeff Petrie to the Habs, making $4.7 million for this year and next. And it's worth noting, he had a no movement clause and elected to be a part of this, which is very interesting to me. But he goes back to Montreal after a season in Pittsburgh. Of course, before that, he had spent 8 years or so in Montreal, so he had been there for a while. They also pick up goaltender Casey DeSmith, which is another big surprise to me, $1.8 million against the cap this year. Forward prospect Nathan Legare, and if I'm saying that incorrectly, I apologize, but somebody from Montreal. He was a third-round pick of the Penguins in 2019, and they also pick up Pittsburgh's second-round pick in 2025. In terms of being the team that helped facilitate this deal, and obviously we'll talk about what they gave up as well, Montreal did very, very well for themselves in this trade.
Like they I think here, and like the crazy thing is, it's like they weren't technically mathematically needed to facilitate. Right. I think, the GM kind of jumped in there, and that's a good sign for the new management team. Or new-ish. Not super,
yeah,
but
Kent Hughes has been the GM of this team for 1 year and 6 months. And my God, the turnaround for the Habs in that time in terms of just the sheer optimism off of the signings, the trades now. I mean, we factor in he made the big move to get Alex Newhook from the Colorado Avalanche, and we'll wait to see what happens with that. There was the acquisition of Sean Monahan, where they secured a draft pick as well for taking his contract. I mean, he's made some Kirby Doc. That trade as well was under his tenure as the GM of this team.
Was hiring Marty St. Louis as well.
Yeah.
He's killing it so far. Like, he's killing it so far. That's great. I like shitting on the Habs, but I can't. Like, he's...
Yeah, they are in such a better spot right now than I think any Habs fan thought they would be, because they went to the Cup final against Tampa, the weird one.
Yep.
And then immediately after that, shit went downhill fast. Like, the following season, they were terrible. Carey Price starts going through his personal issues as well, and it's like any sense of optimism surrounding that team disappeared fast. But they didn't wait around before getting it back on track. And, man, they've gotten it back on track in a huge, huge way. Again, Jeff Petrie, he's 35 years old at this point. He'll turn 36 during the course of the season. But that is a veteran presence on their blue line where they have a lot of younger defenders. Caden Gooley, Jordan Harris, Arbor Jacki, of course, could be considered amongst that crop as well. Justin Barron, they just drafted David Reinbacher. Jaden Strubl's there. Like, that is a great player to have as a veteran presence on that team for those young guys, and still a capable player at this stage. I mean, again, Jeff Petrie, it wasn't all that long ago at the start of the season, we were joking about him being a fucking Norris candidate because he got off to a really hot start in one of those seasons, but he did have 31 points in 61 games last year, so he's still capable of putting up points.
Yeah.
Casey DeSmith is the interesting one. Now, he has still not shaken an incident that happened in college. Whenever you mention the name, at least whenever I mention the name Casey DeSmith, people are always immediately bringing up, remember that this happened. And I can agree that, hey, it's probably the right thing to remember that, you know, this happened. And for those who do not know,
I don't actually.
September 2014, he was arrested for assaulting a woman who either was or had previously been his girlfriend. He was suspended from the team after his arrest. He accepted a plea bargain in December of 2014. He pled not guilty to all charges against him, including domestic abuse, with the exception of a single count of disorderly conduct. So that is something that will always be brought up when Casey DeSmith is mentioned, so I felt like I had to do it there. But in terms of him on the ice, he has been a pretty damn solid goaltender. This past season was his lowest save percentage at a .905. Prior to that, he hadn't posted less than a .912 as a kind of backup 1B situation. And just in terms of Montreal's goaltending, because of that, you're talking about Jake Allen, Casey DeSmith, and Sam Montembeault as a trio. And that seems to be the theme lately, is goaltending trios instead of the typical tandems. And that's one of the more solid ones. You know, I don't know. You don't have like an Igor Shesterkin in terms of the guaranteed guy, but those are three very, very solid NHL goaltenders. Legare, he's been an AHLer. We don't know. And then a second-round pick. Who knows? But, again, for a team that wasn't expected to be a part of this, I think they crushed it.
Hey, I will say, Nathan Legare, he is Quebecois. So, there you go. Montreal hits the quota. You know, you got to have at least one Quebecois player on the lineup every night, at least an opening night. Who knows? He gets a few games in there because of that Quebecois bonus. But, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with what they picked up over there.
The Quebecois quota.
Yeah, it's true. Like, what is it? They freaked out like a couple years ago because they were gonna have a night where there wasn't a single Quebecois player playing for the game, and then like they have had ones playing on the roster for like the entirety of the franchise, and like fans were irate and just going absolutely nuts. And like, I get it, but like at the same time, you put out the best squad that you can.
Yeah. So, thumbs up for Montreal. We move to the Pittsburgh Penguins side of this equation. Of course, team president, or president of hockey ops, Kyle Dubas, who Obama memed himself by naming himself the GM of the team as well earlier in the week. They pull off this acquisition of Erik Karlsson. San Jose retains $1.5 million, meaning it will be $10 million flat against the cap for the next 4 seasons of Erik Karlsson, who again is 33 years old. They also acquire forward prospect Dylan Hamiluk, who was a second-round pick in 2019 of the Sharks. Only played 6 games last season, those in the ECHL, so I'm going to guess some injury issues there. They also get a 2026 third-rounder from the Sharks, and from Montreal, they acquire forward Rem Pitlick. So from the Pittsburgh perspective, Pitlick, fringe NHLer at this stage, I think he's really shown some moments. He had 15 points in 46 games last year in the NHL, played 18 games in the AHL with 22 points. So maybe someone who is too good for the AHL, but maybe not quite good enough for the NHL, a full-time spot. We'll see. Hamiluk, who knows? Again, prospect, just like Legare. Third-round pick, we won't know for the future. The big thing is that the Penguins acquire Erik Karlsson. And we kind of knew, obviously, like Kyle Dubas' strategy is going to be I need to win a Stanley Cup as fast as possible because Pittsburgh, the clock's ticking. You have 35-year-old Sidney Crosby, 37-year-old Evgeny Malkin, 36-year-old Chris Letang. And we talked about that, too, when Dubas went to Pittsburgh. The idea of, my God, if he wins a Stanley Cup before Toronto. And this pushes them closer to being there. Getting someone like Erik Karlsson completely changes the outlook of that team in terms of what they're going to be able to do offensively, of course, not just defensively. And right now, Cap Friendly, again, we don't know for sure, but Cap Friendly has it pegged in as their defense of Ryan Graves with Erik Karlsson, Marcus Pettersson with Chris Letang, and P.O. Joseph with Chad Ruhwedel.
That top four is really good. I really wanted Marcus Pettersson. Yeah,
the fact you get to push Letang down, and he's playing with Pettersson, like you were saying, and I'm sorry that I interrupted, but someone that, hey, you would have been all right with seeing come back in the deal is really good.
Yes.
It's just kind of crazy that it finally happened. And obviously, like, we'll talk about this from the Sharks' perspective the most, but it is that thing of just, all right, Pittsburgh gets Erik Karlsson, and is it going to be worth the risk? I think inherently it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Or for them. I mean,
with their
why
situation,
not?
hell yeah. Like, you gotta throw everything that you can at it.
Yeah.
Like, their window is closing quickly. You have to go for it while you can.
And I think they're in a decent spot to do it. I mean, again, goaltending right now is shaping up to be Jari and Nedeljkovic. It's still a team with, you know, Gensel, Crosby, Rost, Malkin, Raquel. They brought in Riley Smith right after the Stanley Cup final. And now, again, you add Erik Karlsson, 101 points last season as a defenseman, the reigning Norris winner.
20 goals too, right?
25 goals.
Yeah, he was like the only one who could do shit on the Sharks.
Well, that's the thing I was going to mention, right? Is the idea of when he only puts up 75 points, the articles are going to be incendiary. And that's bullshit. Because he's going to be playing with a lot more talent, and there's going to be less puck to go around than there was in San Jose this past season.
Yeah, but he's going to be quarterbacking that top power play too. And my goodness, he is good at that.
I mean, again, like, you're talking about a power play. I mean, Jesus, do you stack and go like Crosby, Malkin, like Karlsson and Letang could each quarterback their own power play. So I'm going to be really intrigued.
Because when we tried putting Burns and Karlsson together on the power play, it wasn't great.
Yeah. Trying to look up last season. I got to go to Hockey Reference really quickly here. But, you know, I'm just trying to think last season and how it will transfer over to this season, especially from Pittsburgh's perspective. I was going to look up their power play percentage because if I am not mistaken, I recall a lot of people saying that Pittsburgh's power play was maybe a little bit off last season, but maybe I'm confusing that with the prior season. The Pittsburgh Penguins last season had an outside top 10 power play, 21.72%. Just below the New Jersey Devils, just above the Minnesota Wild, so it wasn't that bad. Obviously, I'm intrigued to see, like, okay, Ryan Graves was a big signing for them too. How much heavy lifting does he do from the defensive standpoint? You know, with Erik Karlsson, I mean, Erik Karlsson's going to be assigned the role of rover. Like, you are the fourth forward when you're on the ice.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I like this deal for Pittsburgh a lot. It is that idea of they had to go for it, and as we'll talk about, maybe they didn't have to give up the most to get it done, but it's also not that surprising given what San Jose wanted from this deal, and we'll go over to that. So far, thumbs up from Montreal, it's a thumbs up from Pittsburgh. The San Jose Sharks, from Montreal, reacquire franchise legend Mike Hoffman, who makes $4.5 million against the cap for this upcoming season. He is, God, how old is Mike Hoffman at this point? 33. Will turn 34 in the midst of the season. From the Pittsburgh Penguins, they acquire forward Mikael Granlund, who is 31 years old and making $5 million against the cap both this year and next. They also get Jan Ruda from Pittsburgh, making $2.75 million this year and next. And then biggest piece of the trade. A first-round pick in 2024 from Pittsburgh, but it's a conditional pick. It is top 10 protected, which I don't think the Penguins are going to finish bottom 10 or get a top 10 lottery pick this year. Is a chance, but... So, you look at the return on this, and I know a lot of people are being like, man, only one pick? Man, no big prospect from either team. But essentially what this is what we saw with Arizona moving Oliver Ekman-Larsson to Vancouver and taking on Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, I forget the third, and knowing that those guys... It was Antoine Roussel. There you go. And knowing that those deals, for Arizona, they expired that following season. Obviously, for the Sharks, Granlund and Ruda will take an extra year. But it's that idea of you get out from underneath the Erik Karlsson contract. You'll have money to spend sooner. These assets that you picked up are easier to move. You'll be able to retain salary on someone like Mike Hoffman this upcoming season. Right. And it's the idea of you only retained $1.5 million in Erik Karlsson. Like, that is the idea, as they moved out $10 million worth of that cap hit. So they might not have gotten as much back, but they also didn't have to retain as much, and that is clearly what they were looking to do.
Yeah, I think it's pretty smart. In that sense, like, yeah, if you only retain, you moved out 10 mil. Yes, you took back some, but the interest now is that, okay, how, Hoffman probably flippable at the deadline. Mm-hmm. And then you're hoping Granlund bounces back and maybe has interest in people like, over the offseason to trade him, maybe at the draft or something like that, or maybe you have to hold on and then try to deadline him as well. Ruda, multiple Stanley Cup winner. He's a guy that teams are going to look to want to add. Everyone wants to add on the blue line. Maybe the Leafs will do it. They're obsessed with the blue line right now. So maybe they'll want Jan Ruda. Like, yeah, like I said, he's got the extra year, but you've essentially given yourself 3 different pieces that you could probably flip for prospects or picks. So, like, in the aggregate, you still got prospects and picks. It's just you have to wait for them to kind of kick in a sense. So, Ed, when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, God damn it, why do you let them top 10 protect the first rounder? But if the Penguins suck and that pick becomes top 10, it'll get bounced back to next season. No
protection on it.
No protection. And if Pittsburgh sucks this year, odds are they're going to be potentially worse next year. So, like, you both ways kind of looks decent. So, yeah, like the initial, like, it's like, like the Timo Meier thing. It's like, was that really the best we could do? But I think, freeing up the 10 mil cap space, in the future, you can weaponize that cap space. We have one retention slot. You can probably use it to retain half of Hoffman and ship him out this season at the deadline. Make him a cheap-ass option for a competitive team. You can probably, with the retention, you should get it like at least a second for that. And for Ruda and Granlund, Ruda would be, I think, wanted by a lot of teams next season. Granlund depends on how he performs, but at this point, yeah, you're weaponizing your cap space. I think that's going to be the Sharks for the next 2 to 3 years, weaponizing their cap space, drafting heavy, getting prospects, and trying to turn this around as quickly as possible. Honestly, I really like what Mike Greer's doing, and I know a lot of people, because everyone likes to react to a trade immediately. Oh, Sharks got fleeced. Penguins fleeced the Sharks. It's like, I think every team got what they needed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, this is one of those occasions where every single team got exactly what they needed for what they're trying to do.
I think every team's a winner. Every team's a winner in this one. I think this is out of the past couple years, this is the most evenly split off trade, because San Jose, they're not looking to win. They're looking to build up picks. Pittsburgh has to go all in, and then Montreal is trying to find an identity and something to lean off of, because they're not going to get Carey Price back in that, so they're basically trying to find some sort of common ground over there. So they get the Smith, and they get another Quebecois guy over there too. So honestly, very, very even across all the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys Nailed it. I mean, every trade is one that people immediately try to decide a winner, and I always go into the spiel of like, look, it's the outlook of the trade and who you think wins can change and will change over the next year, over the next 3 years, over the next 5. Yeah. This one especially. Montreal with that second-round pick, who knows who they land? Pittsburgh with that third-round pick, who knows? And if Pittsburgh wins a cup, who gives a shit what you gave up? Even if they don't win a cup, they went for it, and they had to. It was smart. For San Jose, all of these, number one, there's that first-round pick, which you never know.
We got Quentin Musty in the 20s, and he looked really fucking good at the Hlinka thing.
Yep. It's one of those things where, like, you always talk about trade trees. This is going to be a big one, especially if the Sharks, who, by the way, pending UFAs after this upcoming season, so these are prime options to trade. Kevin Labanc, Mike Hoffman, Anthony Duclair, Alex Barabanov, Oscar Lindblom, Radim Shimmick, Jacob McDonald, Kaapo Kähkönen in goal. All UFAs at the end of this upcoming season. Now, I'm not sitting here saying you're going to get this amazing haul on paper for all of these guys, but we did talk about the offense that Erik Karlsson provided. No one should be surprised if Mike Hoffman or Mikael Granlund put up significantly more points this year in San Jose than they would have on their respective teams last year in, you could say lesser roles. I mean, Granlund had, I think both Hoffman and Granlund had about 30, 40 points the past season. Granlund in particular, Pittsburgh was dreadful. He had 5 points in 21 games.
Yeah, he's bad.
It's just one of those things where right now, if you had to declare a winner, I think you have to go from the perspective of who landed the best player, and that is the Pittsburgh Penguins. But again, I don't think a winner inherently means that a team lost. I don't think you can fairly say any of these teams lost. And again,
no, they all got what they're looking for.
Yep,
5 years from now, this trade's going to look different.
Yeah.
So I get the idea why some Sharks fans would be like, Jesus, we traded Timo Meier. Oh, look at what we gave up for Karlsson in the first place. But, you look back at that Erik Karlsson trade. We go all the way back to September 13th.
Which everyone was like, oh my God, the Sharks fleeced the Sens the first year. And then the next year, the narrative changed as if no one ever said the Sharks fleeced the Sens, and it was the Sens fleeced the Sharks. Like,
exactly.
And you can go back and look at tweets and everything.
So, fun fact.
That existed.
Cap Friendly has a discuss this trade option. September 13th, 2018. Ha 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 ha. How does Wilson keep doing this? All caps. The picks are all conditional. How did Ottawa not at least get Merkley out of this?
Yeah, I'll give you Merkley if you give us fucking Norris back. Would love that.
Winner, loser, this is a no-brainer. What is the condition? If Melnyk leaves, they get the picks and this clown show can finally end? The Sharks' blue line now. Sweet Jesus.
Oh, about Melnyk, huh?
Let's see. Condition for one of the first. If Karlsson plays for an Eastern Conference team, Ottawa gets another first. Pathetic. Dorian's a fucking idiot. No Merkley, no Meier, no Labanc. They got a third-line center, a college player who would choose not to sign there in a few picks. Yeesh. Hard to say the Sharks aren't clear winners here. Let's see. What else do we got? I think you guys get the... Whoever voted fair deal has to be a delusional Sens fan. Embarrassing for Ottawa. What an atrocious deal for Ottawa. If there's no extension, this is a farcical return for Ottawa's franchise player. I genuinely feel bad for Sens fans at this point. Their franchise is one gigantic tire fire. All of these posts are from the day of the trade.
Yeah,
none of these are with the power of hindsight.
I feel so vindicated, like, because the narrative has been since then. The Senator is a masterclass, completely ripped off the Sharks because we got Stützle out of it. Like, even like, again, you have to look at what that pick was at the time. No one fucking expected it to turn into Stützle. No. Just it was a Murphy's Law of a season for the Sharks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, dude, seriously, like a Sens fan, this is franchise-altering. Dorian whiffed on it. Another Sens fan, I'm sad there's no excitement at all for the upcoming year. One person, can't wait to see how Dorian handles trading Duchesne and Stone. They were right that those would go down. This will go down as maybe the worst trade of all time. How do you get less for Karlsson than what you gave up for Duchesne? Pacioretty got a better return. Lol. Like, again, these are all from that day. And now, like Sin said, we look back at this trade, and it's, oh my god, the Sharks fucked up. That is the whole point. This will change. The opinions on today's deal, Karlsson to Pittsburgh, will change because, you know, again, we talked about the trade, talking about what it was. It was Erik Karlsson and forward Francis Perron for Dylan DeMello, Chris Tierney, Rudolph Balcers, the signing rights to Josh Norris, which, again, you saw someone post there. There was concern that Josh Norris would not sign with Ottawa after spending time at the University of Michigan in his sophomore year. And then is where it turns around. You know, they got a second-round pick that became, or there was a second-round pick involved that became Zach Ostapchuk, another pick involved that became forward Jamison Reese, but the big one is Tim Stützle. Yeah. And nobody, I don't think anybody thought Tim Stützle would be this good. He was the 3rd overall pick in 2020. I don't think anybody could have predicted his 3rd season in the NHL, he'd have 90 points in 78 games with 39 goals.
On Ottawa.
On Ottawa.
On Ottawa. Again.
And then you had Norris, who scored fucking... Wasn't he on pace for like 40 before he got injured? Like,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so he got hurt at the beginning of this past season. He only played 8 games this past season.
Then it must have been the season before that where he
The season before, he had 55 points in 65 games with 35 goals.
Yeah.
So would have cleared 40, no problem.
Jeez. Give that guy the puck. Holy.
And we can go back on elite prospects because they keep up where players were ranked. Tim Stützle was a guy that people were just like, oh yeah, no, this is a consensus 2nd, 3rd overall pick. I'm not saying he was an out of nowhere pick, but the idea that he is that good at such a young age, and you know, we see it now. I know Jay Fresh has been doing his fan vote redrafts. Tim Stützle was top of the board for 2020, and no shit. But how many people would have said that? You know, after Lafreniere went 1st overall, Quentin Byfield 2nd.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough to say. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. It worked out tremendously for Ottawa. San Jose at the time, the goal was, we're trying to stay competitive. We made the final.
It's what Pittsburgh's is. Like, right
literally,
now.
they are in the exact same spot, the Pittsburgh Penguins, as the Sharks are right now, where it's we are trying to hold off on this rebuild for as long as possible. Because at the time, if I'm not mistaken, was Patrick Marleau still there? Because Thornton was.
Thornton was still there.
In September of 2018. Was Marleau a Leaf yet or a Penguin?
Yeah, I think he was, because he went in what, 20...
He was a Leaf. 17,
and then played 2 years of his 3 years and was traded to Carolina, then bought out, and then we brought him back to break the games played record.
Yeah, so I mean, this is...
Or did he go to Pittsburgh in between?
He went to Pittsburgh in between.
Okay, yeah.
I think, something like that. But, you know, you look at it's the 2018-19 San Jose Sharks, and they needed Erik Karlsson. They did. Like, you know, you had Brent Burns on defense already. Vlasic was getting older. They had Brendan Dillon, Justin Braun. It's very similar to Pittsburgh's defense right now. Chris Letang equals Brent Burns. You have some of these other guys in the mix. Like, those situations are so similar where San Jose was trying to hold on. You had Thornton. You had Evander Kane, Joe Pavelski, Timo Meier, Couture, Tomas Hertl. It was the idea of let's push. Let's not be done. We got to keep going for it. It didn't work out, but I do think now ending the Erik Karlsson era, ultimately I think they did okay on the return. And, you know, we'll see. Much like we talked about with this trade of who won the trade, you can go back. Like I said, you look at Erik Karlsson's player profile on Cap Friendly. There is a little blue button that says trade history. And then next to the date from that Senators trade, you can click and it's discuss trade, and it's there. It's the proof is in the pudding of what the thoughts were behind that Karlsson trade when it first happened. And now 5 years later, people feel differently about it. I don't think Sharks fans need to be overly upset because granted, with hindsight, the alternative was 2018, they give up. 2 years after making the cup final, they give up. And they go scorched earth into a rebuild. And you would always be left with the question of, fuck, what if they went for it?
Yeah.
And I can tell you as a Bruins fan, especially from 2013, 2019, this year, it is much better to at least know that they went for it and failed instead of having the questions of, God, if they went for it, they might have done it. It's so much better to at least know that your team fucking tried to win, even if it didn't work out. Also, my favorite comment. How can you be this bad? Thank God Montreal has Bergeron and not this clown.
Oh my God.
It's amazing, dude. It's just, see how quickly landscape and narrative shifts. Good talk,
Goodness. Good talk. So, again, I think they all did very, very well for themselves, but we'll see how we feel in a year, 5 years, especially now that we're looking back at Karlsson to the Sharks 5 years later.